Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.Rent. I'm Justin Lewis.
And I'm Tanner Wayland.
And we are here to help you tell better stories for yourself and your players as you dungeon master sessions of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons. We'd like to give you some quick announcements. We actually have one before the show, and then after the show, if you want to stick around, we have some more announcements then as well. But first, let's talk about this. Tired of being alone? Are you tired of not having any of your players understand you? Are you tired of never truly belonging? Well, you're in luck. All you need to do is join the Guild. The Guild is a unique and exclusive experience that is only open to Dungeon Masters. It is a full community focused on helping ease your DMing burdens. Want to meet other DMs? Join the Guild. Want to discuss your homebrew ideas with people who would appreciate it instead of just telling your cat? Join the Guild. Want to find a place where all your wildest dreams will come true? Join the Guild. Go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free. Wait, that can't be right. Chuck, can you check this again? Is this supposed to be... What? Oh, they're serious? It's free? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free, even though they are crazy for giving this away for free. Common side effects may include burping, sneezing, laughing, breathing, hearing, listening, tasting, farting, critting, sarcasm, and in extreme cases, explosive diarrhea. Awesome. With that out of the way, we can get into today's show.
Hello and welcome to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.Rent. My name is Tanner Wayland, and together we're going to learn about how to prepare the best campaigns for our players. Today, Justin's still, pretty busy with a baby. It's crazy how they take multiple months to grow up. Isn't that insane? I'm just kidding. Totally joking with you. We're happy that he's getting some rest, and we'll be excited when he does feel like he has enough time to come back. In the meantime, you got little old Tanner keeping you company. And today we're going to go for... I wouldn't call it a D&D basic, like I did last time. I would rather call this an interactions basic that can be really applied to D&D. Have you ever heard of the term yes and? It's used a lot in comedy and improv. Basically, it's the ability to accept and interact with any suggestion, idea, or premise that someone else proposes, and then you accept it, say yes, and then you add on top of it. Now, obviously, you can do that with so many jokes, and so many people have done it to great effect. But what does it have to do with D&D? I would argue that it has everything to do with how a DM and a player can cooperatively create stories and adventures. Now, in a joke, obviously, just to explain, kind of the yes and premise, with a joke, it'd be like, oh, someone else is like, oh, you're my long lost brother. They kind of propose that. And then you're like, yes, I am your long lost brother. But then you have to add on top of it, right? You could add I am your long lost brother, and you're really harshing my vibe with how excited you are. So I'm actually going to leave town again, right? Or you can take it anywhere you want. And sometimes, if you go along with the premise super closely, that works really well. Or if you take it and just put a huge twist on it, then that works too, right? If someone else is like, hey, you're my long lost brother, then the twist would be like, I mean, yeah, I guess you could consider me lost, bro, but it was only 2 minutes, and the twist is like, hey, long is kind of a stretch. Now in D&D, you have so many opportunities to yes and your players. And there's many DMs who don't take it. And frankly, I think it's because we all, we put so much time and hours and effort into preparing our adventures, so that if a player is like, hey, can I change it somewhat fundamentally, or put a spin or a different branch that takes more prep or that takes, more effort, we just kind of shirk away and we're like, I could actually just be like, no, that's not realistic for, for a hidden room to be in here, uh, or for a specific item that you're searching for to be in the story, We just look at it from an effort perspective and also from a control perspective. And frankly, yes anding random suggestions from players can be a bother. And you can't always see how it pays off. But the thing is, if you don't pay it off, if you don't yes their suggestion, then they're going to stop making suggestions. They're going to stop trying to collaboratively create a story and a world with you. And they'll just become essentially backseat, just purveyors of the story that you've presented, and they won't be helping create that story, which isn't fun for you, and it's not as fun for them either, right? Now, when it comes to, I was talking about players when they suggest something, one way you can find out how kind of your starting point with this principle is to just think about like, hey, where am I? What is my initial reaction when a player asks or suggests something, right? Like for me, I had a player once who was a rogue, and he, just immediately when they got to a town was like, okay, every night I go out and I think I've told this story before, but it just stumped me. He said, every night I go out and I'm going to go try rob some houses, because he was thinking, I'm going to get some money and that's going to, serve me well once we get to the next shop or the next town and we need to buy something, right? And I just didn't treat it well, I put in as little effort as possible. I tried to basically make it so that like, oh, even though he's a rogue and he has all the abilities in the world, I try to make it like, people are pretty on guard, oh, people are still awake, or, oh man, the door's locked. And, oh gosh, I guess the roll that you rolled was too low, and sleight of hand didn't allow you to break in. I didn't really play ball. And my fear is what a lot of DMs fear. It was, what if they get too much power? What if it takes up too much time and the other players are like, well, screw this. Just because he's a rogue, he gets to go out and just get free money every day, Uh, and I don't think that I was wrong to have those feelings. What the issue is and like I did do a half yes, I guess you could say, because I was like, yeah, you go out. And, I think for like a couple houses, because this went on for a sec, for a couple houses, I was trying to make it interesting. There was a little fight in one. There was one house where I was like, okay, it's quiet. You rolled really well. And I gave him a little bit of money, But I think that I could have gone a lot better. And that's where, there's a few rules that you can implement with yes and D&D that can make this just really rewarding for you and your players. So first off, you've got to switch your mindset. Wherever you are on the spectrum of agreeing with players versus shutting them down and kind of being negative towards their suggestions, wherever you are, if you want to do this well and if you want to get good at it, you've just got to start, like, kind of turn your knob all the way to positive. You've got to start agreeing with every suggestion that your players do. Even if it's not a suggestion, even if it's a question, you need to lean in. You need to lean into the creativity and to the suggestions that they posit. And then that's going to open the floodgates so that they are willing to do it more. Now, why you're probably thinking, okay, Tanner, that's too much. That's way too much freedom. And I agree, but I would argue that you won't get to a place that is truly new and different from your current experience with yes and if you try and start from where you are or from a more negative or less accepting position and then try and become more accepting. That's okay, but you will actually jumpstart this whole mindset shift. You'll jumpstart it completely if you start at the other end and you just begin like, hey, yeah, I agree. Oh, you're looking for a chest or something like in the random peasant's house? Oh, you found a chest. Yeah. And guess what? Maybe on the fly you'll be good at doing the and to that and like making so it's not, just an amazing boon or it comes with, some consequences. Whatever it is, it's better to just go along with it and then get better at making twists that make it so it's not always a 100% good thing for them that their suggestion got taken, right? Or that you kind of get better at knowing which yes ands you need to kind of shut down more, right? Because there are a few, there's a few that you need to kind of, for the good of the game and for the other players, you need to make it hard or dissuade someone from doing the kind of the premise that they suggest, right? Uh, but I wouldn't say that right now. You probably shut down more ideas, even if it's subconscious. You shut down more ideas than you realize would actually be really funny or fun or creative. And so just start by accepting everything and giving it validation and then work backwards from there. Start, if you accept the premise, then you can kind of tweak it in ways that makes it so it's not breaking the game, but it's adding to the game. I use the example of like, oh, a player in a random peasant house is like, hey, I'm going to look for a chest. And instead of you being like, well, he's a peasant, he doesn't have much in the way of worldly means, instead you could be like, oh, okay. Yeah, roll perception. And then, let's say that they get a high enough roll because if they fail their roll, that's a great excuse to not do it. And not because you're trying to poo-poo their suggestion, but they were unlucky. But let's say that they get that good roll and that you were actually playing along with that suggestion instead of being like, oh, you look around, there's nothing. They roll well, and oh my goodness, underneath the bed, you don't see a chest, but you see some loose boards. And then under the boards, you actually see a sack. Now, at that point, you have a few options. And this is where the and of it all comes in, right? Because it's not just yes. It's yes and. And some people think that it's just the yes, where you're like, oh, I guess I'm just a pushover who always accepts suggestions. No. If it was just that, then the players would feel like they're doing all the work and it wouldn't also be that collaboration that you're looking for. The and comes in where you add to the premise. So instead of a chest or anything, like the player was looking for, you found a sack. And it wasn't just under the bed. They had to roll for it and they had to find it. So that's already like, oh my goodness. That brings alive the experience for them, right? On top of that, let's say that they opened the sack. And instead of what they were expecting, it's a little doll. And the little doll is kind of charred, a little burnt, and kind of Toy Story style. It has a name on the bottom of the foot, just scratched in. And then guess what? They found something that wasn't like, oh, it's going to make them super OP'd or give them all the money in the world. No, you added a new element. Now you're probably thinking, Tanner, how am I going to come up with some random thing on my feet? At the start, you're not going to be good at it. With time, you'll be a lot better. And honestly, especially with time, you'll be able to weave in certain threads that lead to later parts of the story or that kind of lead to character development or play into character backstories. Or maybe you'll just be good enough at some point where, you come up with the random doll under the bed because a player suggested like looking really hard for chests or any like monetary thing, then, you could come up with that story of the doll and that doll could be haunted or it could be anything else, right? My point is that you're going to have so much practice with this if you just jump in with accepting any premise that with time you'll be so much better at like changing it and making it so that when you yes and a player, they can't wait to hear what the and of it all is. So get started right now, honestly. It's so fun once you get started. And it's also going to work so much in terms of just entertaining your players. when you go along with a joke and, and they say, oh, I'm going to try and like levitate a flower to freak someone out. And if instead you're like, oh, they see you do the magic and they shut it down, they're like, hey, stop fooling around. If instead you're like, oh, the NPC freaks out and he starts swinging with his axe and you're right there. Okay, I'm going to roll. Oh, he hit you, and then you get to have a funny, hilarious interaction with like, oh my goodness, this guy swinging at a floating flower. And then it just goes off from there. So this is not only a great story and adventure building tip, but it's just going to make your adventures more fun and funny in general. But otherwise, I would just really encourage you to start this right away. This is unlike a lot of our tips, which is like, hey, you got to plan better, or you got to think about these different things. It takes a little bit more prep. Yes, and isn't something that you prepare for. I've said it a few times now, it's a mindset. And then if you change your mindset to that positivity of accepting suggestions, then the and is going to come, right? Just try and be creative. You're going to find that as you're creative, you'll find out which things do work and which things, aren't always a success with the players. But at least you tried, and it's always going to be better than the alternative, which was you shutting down a suggestion, right? So I hope that next time that you meet with your party, you get together and you make time for that. And you make also just a mental note that like, hey, for this session, I'm going to yes and everything. And then I think that you're going to have a wonderful game, and I couldn't be more excited for you. So until next time, let's roll initiative.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We really appreciate your support and your patronage. We have a few more announcements to go over. First,
did you ever fall in love with the library as a kid? It was a place where you could experience 1,000 stories without having to buy 1,000 books. That is what Monsters.Rent can do for your D&D campaign. You can rent and swap out as many quality miniature monsters and creatures for your D&D party as you could ever want, without having to buy them. You can rescue villagers from a kobold camp, or lead your party through the fighting forest, or many more adventures. We're coming out with new bundles all the time. Just sign up for our subscription to get access to your own personal library of minis. Go to Monsters.Rent to find out more. That's the website. Monsters, with an S, .rent. Get your library pass to a world of minis today.
we also wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Stardust and Dragons. I'm going to let one of the cast of Stardust and Dragons, Christian Hatcher, and his crew tell you a little bit more about it.
This August, a new adventure podcast is coming to a platform near you, filled with action.
Shoot one of the two of them. We can't keep taking hits like that.
Drama.
Everything that she's been doing, everything she's going to do, finally sets in.
And Stardust.
Help! Help! Someone, please!
Find out more about this epic odyssey at stardustanddragons.com, where adventure awaits in the stars.
That's all the announcements we have today. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. You make this show possible. Like we said before, we'll be back next week with another great episode, and until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.